Hi guys, Adam Steele here from Hot Pole Studios, and in that little bit of bass demo there, you might have noticed that I was playing in standard tuning, and then I clicked to switch, and suddenly I was in drop D without having to do any tuning, any waiting around. And that's something I've been wanting to do for a very long time. So I'm using one of the Hipshot drop D tuners. And today we're going to talk about installing them, where you can use them, not only on bass but on guitar as well, and the little fiddly bits associated with it and whether it's worth it for you. So the first thing to talk about, I guess, is do you need one of these? Do you have any songs or parts of a set where you could really do with switching from standard tuning to a drop D tuning, or even something like a drop C tuning, because you can define how far you want that bottom string to move and back instantly. If you're not one of those people, maybe it's not right for you. If you can either stop and tune, or if you can put a guitar down and grab another one, then by all means do that. But quite often, especially for me, I like to have a number one bass on stage. I like to have backups, but I don't really like tuning in between songs and making the crowd wait. Because the way that I tend to play, unless we're talking to the crowd for a little bit, we tend to finish one song and go straight into the next. And some songs essentially have to be played in a drop tuning. There are ones that I play like Uptown Funk, which has got that kind of it's down there somewhere, but then the next song might be an E, and now I can go straight back to E without even having to check a tuner, as long as I knew that everything was relatively in tune to begin with. And this is something you can do on a bass, and you can also do it on guitar, but be careful with the guitar versions if you have a very light tremolo or Floyd Rose or something like that, because they can end up fighting each other a little bit, because as you relieve tension, that could also be said for anyone who tunes the same guitar down to drop D or whatever in the middle of a set. That's anything that would mess around too much with your trem system. It's no different than actually tuning in the middle of a show. Those kind of guitarists are going to have to take the guitar, put it down, and get a different one, especially if you've got something like a lockdown Floyd Rose. If you've got it locked down, obviously nothing you do with the tuners will really help. So in that case, this is a non-starter. But what this is a very clever, and I'll give you a bit of a zoom in here, it's a very clever replacement for one of the tuning heads, the machine heads. And it's got a lever on it, and it's got kind of a system which has two plates with a washer. And so in standard tuning, you have this lever up, and it uses the tension of the string to keep the tuner perfectly in place. And as you flip the lever, that releases some tension, and then the tuner moves slightly, but it moves by a point that you define based on this thumb screw that's on the back, which is why, again, you can choose to change that depending on if you change your string tension. You can change the amount that it goes to make sure that that drop note is in tune as well. So let's flick back in time by about half an hour and look at installing this. So this one I can't even undo, so I'm just going to have to snip it. Goodbye, the half of string. In fact, I'm just going to snip them all because it's nice and quick. Never going to use them again. Everything is fine. So the first thing I need to do is remove this one and then transplant this one, which we're going to replace with our new drop tuner, up to there to replace this broken one. The entire reason that I started this project was because this tuner was broken off in an accident on stage, and I decided now would be a good time to do the whole drop tune thing. So, that screw's a little loose already. See, there are other things that acoustic foam comes in useful for when people moan, oh, you got so much acoustic foam behind you. So I don't just use it for dampening mid to high reflections. Bit of an off-topic tangent while I'm doing this. Most of the reason that you see a lot of acoustic foam behind me in here is not for soundproofing. And I say this to people over and over and over. It's for high-end dampening, specifically behind the monitors and on that side of the room. If you were to see the camera from the other side of the room, there is a lot less of that type of acoustic foam and dampening in here. It's really just in crucial key points, apart from there's quite a lot on that back wall because it's a slightly curved wall. And this room is acoustically isolated and is floating and is a beautifully designed room. But when the plasterer did his plastering work, it was all nice and perfectly shiny, as it was a perfect plastering finish on top of the floating walls. What that meant was that even though we had something ridiculous like 40 decibels or more of complete isolation from the next room, the high end in here was bouncing around like it was some sort of cave. And so, even though the rooms, and especially the low end, were really quite nice and even in here because of the complete decoupling from the outside world, the high end particularly, more than anything, just needed to be controlled specifically in key points to my sides above me and more than anything behind where the monitors were emanating all the noise. So here's our good quality Wilkinson tuner. I'm going to pop that out and see if I can pop out the bushing as well. So you can actually see several sets of screw holes on here because the original Squire tuners on here were smaller, which was a real pain in the backside because not only were they small, but the holes for those tuners were smaller as well. So I had to drill them out with a drill press and an arbor unit so that the holes were big enough to accommodate these proper quote-unquote tuners. So I'm now just putting the one that's nice up here, and I'm going to try and choose the 4 least mashed of these screws because I think last time I did this I used a screwdriver that wasn't the appropriate size. I know, naughty me. And slightly mashed the heads, which is never a good thing. So let's get this one installed. I'll put them all in slightly and then tighten them all up. And then we get on to the real star of the show. My friends over at Jack's Instrument Services and over at Brian Eastwood Guitars are probably cringing watching this. But I am, after all, not a professional luthier. And if it was anything more complicated than screwing in some screws, I probably would be seeking assistance. I certainly did when it came to boring out these holes to be the right size. Right, so that's now in nice and solid, and a couple of these are actually a little bit loose, so while I'm here with the perfect size screwdriver, just going to make sure that these don't come flying out at any inopportune moment. Right, so on to Goldilocks here. So the problem, if I just drop that on there and it looks like it fits perfectly because it's the same size, is that you can't get to the screw holes. So I'll get the bushing out here. Now, there's 2 things with this. Firstly, well, the bushing's gold, which I quite like, but also the screws that come with it are flat-headed rather than these bumpy, round-headed ones, which means that they'll sit underneath this sliding plate. So where that moves, you can see me moving that, the screws have to be flat so that they don't rub and grind up against that. So we now have to take this apart, and it did actually say that in the installation instructions. I thought it was really, really strange, but apparently, and this is why I've got this bigger screwdriver, because this is a more appropriate bit size, I think. No, that was a more appropriate bit size, but we've not chewed it. We need to take this entire section off and not lose any of these pieces. So this needs to go on here, where my holes, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 lined up nicely. Fantastic. So I need to get this plate installed. I'm just going to put these on here by hand. Okay, now those should now be flush enough that I can get this back together. So I need to put my bushing in that side, put my piece in there, put a washer on, put my tuning head on, put another washer on, put my tuning cog on there, get that all tightened up. There we go. Now this seems wrong because this is flapping about all over the place, but that is normal because this lever's supposed to be up and the pressure from the string pulling back will now keep that in place until we loosen that, and that moves the tuner very slightly depending on how much we set with this little wheel there, and that should be that. If we flip this over now, it should just look gold. And now I can finally take off this little baggies because that's just been stopping that clover tuner from getting scratched up. And that's it. We have our drop tuning peg on. So I just need to restring it and then we'll move on to the next part. And so having installed that, I had no issues at all. I've had no setbacks, no issues, and it seems to be working absolutely perfectly so far. I've not had a chance to take it out on the road yet, but as long as I'm not smashing it, then my nice new gold tuning head, which does stand out, and I quite like that. I think it's weird, but it's my kind of thing, because it now means this one's special. I got this gold one, by the way, because it was the only one that was in stock with next day shipping in the UK. If you're in the US, you'll probably have more luck finding one that fits. And they do different models for different types of guitar and different types of basses to match your current tuning set. I was originally going to get an entire set of Hipshot tuners, but budget constraints being what they are at the moment, I wasn't going to get one at all, and then one of the tuning heads snapped off on the top of the G string in an accident. And that prompted me, rather than buy an entire new set, why not buy the one drop D tuner and change things round so that now I've got a full set of tuning heads again, and I've got this so that if I do something like I'm playing a show and I can change in between songs, very, very happy days. And something I have noticed, I thought this lever would get in the way of my thumb, and when I'm in drop D, I certainly notice that it's there, although it's just at the edge of fret 1. So I do kind of catch myself on it sometimes. But then the upside there is that when I do need to change from drop D back up, I don't have to look for it and be fiddling. Because that lever's out there, I can just run my hand up the neck and my thumb is naturally in the right place to just click, click, click. And that's a really handy, really clever ergonomic design. It is going to get in the way, but then that's practicality for you. If that's a big problem for you, at least you know in advance. But the way that I tend to play, I tend to have my thumb maybe at the 3rd fret, maybe 2nd fret, and play back from there most of the time. So my thumb usually doesn't go anywhere near that. And it may be something I have to get used to, but because in my regular playing it's not in my way, hopefully it won't be too much of an adjustment period. I think that's all there is to say about that. I'm going to leave a link in the description for where you can find these. This isn't a sponsored video. I went and paid for this myself, which is why I've replaced one Hipshot tuner and not all of them, because again, money. And so I hope you enjoyed this. And in the next video, we're going to talk about a bass pedal board that I've been building and how that can be quite a crazy thing and what that entails. And then we've got more Reaper tutorials, we've got stuff about monitor controllers, all sorts of techie gear coming up. So I hope you really enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoy the next set of videos coming up. Thanks for watching. I'm Adam Steele for Hot Pole Studios, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this, feel free to check out our other videos, as you can find here, or check out our Facebook and Twitter, or our Patreon page, which helps us to make more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.